Hi, we'll take a look at this game from some kind of King's Indian, and we'll try to learn some new things about how to play these positions and how not to play them. So, as mentioned, started as a King's Indian. White played bishop e2, so the main line, and bishop g5. And typically against these aggressive systems with bishop g5, we can't really play e5. Here there's even a tactical resolution after taking everything, and then knight d5. Black will have to sacrifice in exchange, and this will not be very good. So here we transpose to some Benoni type of things. Here the bishop is not defending b2, so it makes sense to attack on the queen side. d5, rook e8. This move looks a bit abstract, as there's no reason to kind of prepare e6. Black can just play e6 if he wants. The main move is h6, but e6 is also fine. Rook e8 is a bit transparent, queen d2, knight b d7, and this already kind of doesn't make sense. So why did we play rook e8? It seems like the only idea is to play e6, and maybe if white took, then the knight could even go to c6. But we want to be a bit more consistent. If we play rook e8, we should just go e6. White knight b d7. White plays f3 for some reason. Now this is some kind of Zaimish structure, and white will try to treat this as some kind of dragon and attack on the king side, which is possible, but it's not necessarily the best way to treat this position. White should just probably develop properly, castle, and he has a fine position. Next he can improve with such moves. Eventually maybe play b4 if the center closes up. Well, okay, f3, and here knight e5 was played, and this move is not very good, but of course it makes sense since we have blocked our bishop. And another problem is that now e6 is a bit less playable because d6 is hanging. For example, here white has a good way to develop like this, going towards the d5 square while also trying to win this d6 pawn, and somehow black's position is not that great. That piece placement is not ideal. But knight e5 has a big problem, which is just the simple move f4, which makes sense for white since he can even develop the knight to f3. And here sometimes knight g4 would be a good move if the bishop was on e3, then we would trap this bishop and take it. But now knight g4 doesn't do much because of h3, and we will just have to go back, and this is basically lost for black. He has no activity, he has no good pieces, and there's even a big tactic that's looming, which black can't really properly defend against. So knight e5 didn't really make much sense. Black should probably try to do something on the queen side. Quite logical moves are this. Black is already threatening to sacrifice b5, and as we will talk about, this is one of the main ideas in these positions. After a4 we can play queen a5, which is quite typical. One idea is to put a queen on b4 and also try to play b5, pinning this a pawn with the rook. So, or black could still try e6, maybe knight f8, at least make sense of this move, and then play e6 and try to get some kind of Benoni. Knight e5 isn't too good, but castling queenside is a bit too ambitious for white. As mentioned, he should just play f4, after knight e d7, which is the best move, play knight f3. And black has big problems. He still hasn't played e6. White has taken up on the whole center. He will castle and have a big advantage. But this is a bit too optimistic for white. He is trying to basically play some kind of Yugoslav attack with bishop h6, which might work out, but black definitely has enough counterplay, or at least he should have. Here a5 was played, which kind of doesn't make sense at all, and this is the big blunder of the game, I would say. Here black should just try to open the skin, the main try being a6, which is very topical for these Benonis, and black is just simply going to sacrifice the pawn. For example, if we take the white attack with h4, we will just play b5, and if white wants to take this pawn, there will be massive consequences. Since these two files are now open, this king is very weak, and white's attack actually has still not started. h5 doesn't really create any threats, and we can even take it with the knight. Bishop h6 is not a thing yet, and checkmate is still a long way away, while black already will have a lot of threats here, with queen b8 or queen a5, or even queen b6, knight c4 as well, and this bishop is waiting for his chance to attack. So a5, the problem with a5 is that it just closes all of the lines. White can, for example, play a4 at any point, and even though black gets one square on b4, which he can try to use, black will not have any attack here, basically, because the position is completely closed. There will be no pawn breaks, and pawn breaks are what we need when opposite sides are castled. So, as mentioned, a6, b5 should be the standard procedure, even if white castled kingside. Black should probably sacrifice this pawn and try to play on the queen side. But instead a5, h4, now white is trying to attack. Black played h5, which isn't really necessary, because h5 is not really a big issue here. For example, if we just push a4, h5, we can just take. Such sacrifices are not yet scary, and something like g4 doesn't really do much because of knight g3. And white is losing tempi. He will not be able to attack us very soon. The c4 pawn is also a bit of a weakness. But instead h5, this also gives a hook. White can already exploit this with g4. For example, if takes, then f4, maybe even h5. And white is getting a very big attack with h5 next move, or even e5, and not too good. But he completes development first, which is sensible enough. a4, a3, and b6. Again, such moves are a bit too slow for the position. Black should probably try to create some kind of threat, for example, put a queen on b3 to take this pawn. And for example, if white attacks, we can even probably take this pawn and put the knight on f3. And of course the position is complicated after lines like this, but white has, black has his chances. And the position is definitely not lost. He can try to take the h file potentially, maybe exchange some pieces, put a queen on b3 in some positions, maybe even take this to go queen b3 and exchange queens. There are some options. Well, after b6, white plays bishop, knight f2, bishop a6, and now black is in time to create a threat, and white has become a bit passive. His knight went to b5, black took, which is sensible enough, and here black decided to put a queen on c7, which is again kind of hard to understand. It seems black should really try to attack as soon as possible, and the only idea here seems to be c4, potentially to either open the c file by putting a knight on d3, or just sacrificing the pawn like this, and also cutting off the bishop from the pawn to go and take this. So you can start with queen d7 as well. But we need some kind of concrete idea. Queen c7, I guess, has this idea, but it's not fast enough. Now knight h7 was played, and for some reason black has become passive. There's no reason not to play the simple c4 move. After something like g4, we can play rook c8, and the next move is c3, opening up the position and getting counterplay. But knight h7 is very passive. White goes g4. Probably more accurate was f4 now, with the idea to play f5 and also g4 at some point, and also not allowing this knight to stay near the queen side. But g4, f6, and this is already the losing move. Again, it's hard to explain this move f6. Now we have totally blocked our bishop, also completely weakened this g6 pawn, and we have also taken away the square from our knight. So here white is completely winning suddenly, and he doesn't even have to find some specific move. And this f6 move was completely suicidal. Instead, black should probably look for counterplay as usual. In these Benoni positions, we cannot just sit and defend. The only way to play is to play actively and towards the opponent's king. For example, with c4, if white opens the g file, we can play c3. For example, takes, rook c8. And if we exchange queens, we will be quite fine. White is 2 pawns up for the moment, but there are a few weaknesses. Yeah, but a potential passed pawn here. The rooks, if they don't checkmate, they don't really make much sense here. So black has his share of counterplay. But here, white is basically just checkmating. Again, black continues to go back. Again, the only chance is to go forward, but he goes back. And this is just a very easy attack for white. Black, even though he put his knights near the king, this didn't really defend his position. And from here the game can just end in various ways. White decided to win a piece and and improve his bishop. Again, make at least one active move. We need some kind of counterplay. For example, if the queens get exchanged, then we at least will not get checkmated, and we can hope to round up this pawn. And if white takes like this, maybe rook c8, try to take this pawn, but of course the position is already hopeless if white plays well. But here, again, very passive play. The rook is doing nothing on f8. e5 happens, very good move by white. He doesn't care about material, it's about opening the bishop. And the rest of the game concluded quite logically until a certain moment. Here clearly white is completely winning, but here he blundered with queen g2. And again, as mentioned in one of the previous game reviews, even when we're completely winning, we cannot relax. We still need to find good moves. Here white can win in a variety of ways. Probably the most simple is to checkmate like this. For example, take, and queen g2, queen g7 next move, and it's game over. Again, to win a game against decent defense, we will need to calculate at some point. Instead, white played here, which makes sense as well, but the problem is he blundered the only check of the position. And here the position is still good for white, but not because of checkmate anymore. Now white has to block with either the queen or the rook, or he will lose this rook, which actually happened in the game. But white can go, for example, queen g5, and after exchanging some queens and exchanging the rooks, here, for example, white is still close to winning, but there is very much work left to be done here. So this was terrible technique by white. In these positions we cannot allow such easy counterplay for black by giving away a pawn with check and also a fork. And as they say, blunders come in pairs, and king b1, rook g7, suddenly black won for some reason. So I assume there might have been some time trouble at the end, but after the opening black was completely lost, and this was because he didn't really look for active counterplay. Starting with this, a5 was a bit abstract. He should just try to open up some kind of lines and not care about pawns here. And he is better if he does that. Later, he started playing very passively, and instead of going for the b5 pawn or c4, c3, he decided to put his pieces near the king and close them off, which of course isn't great. So there we go with this game review, and thanks for watching.